of, there's a lot of like, oh, get over yourself comments. But they're really, though, I choose to focus on the women who are putting themselves out there vulnerable, to basically say, I want closer friendships too, and sharing their stories. So that's a huge premise to burnout and stress. We need other people. And that's, a huge message that I feel that I want to share with everybody.
I'm happy that you bring up connection. One of the things that Dress for Success does is we have a network of community connections, our professional women's group. And we have really strived to expand that because we see the value in those connections in creating community. And as you mentioned, that leads to burnout and stress. And so in this time, if we need to enrich those connections, if we need to, because we do, we need to enrich those connections, we need to have more of a community of people that you might not necessarily be able to see, but you can be able to talk to or Zoom with. What do you recommend is a great way to build those connections, to strengthen those connections?
That's a great question. I want people to hear me say this loud and clear. I'm going to give real examples, but one of the first things, and I write about it in the book, that I say to people is ban busy. Stop saying how busy you are all the time. Stop saying when somebody says, hey, how's it going? Oh, I am so busy. And then blah, 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 blah. And the reason why I say that is that busy builds barriers. It builds walls. It basically, without me even knowing, right? You could say to me, hey, how's it been going? And if I say to you, you know what, I am like so crazy busy. I'm so overwhelmed. The kids are home, right? I could go on and on and on. What that's going to do, let's say in this example with our relationship, is you might think, well, I wanted you to be a speaker on this panel, but damn, I'm not going to ask you now. You seem too busy, right? Or if you're the mom that I only see at drop-offs and I'm always running and I look scattered, you might think, I wanted to see if she wanted to get together, but I don't know. She just seems so busy. And so that's just become this term that we use so freely. And what we don't realize is what it does. And some women use the term quite honestly because they are overwhelmed. And then there's other segment of women that also use the term because it makes them feel important. And I say that with respect and love, but makes you feel, if you said to me, how are you? And I said, I got nothing going on, there's a little chance I'm going to say that, right? Because it would make me unimportant. And so there's not a lot of people that say, oh, nothing. Like maybe we went through a tiny window in the beginning of the pandemic when we were on a nationwide lockdown, where people would say, oh, I got all the time in the world now, but what did we do? We filled our time. We started cleaning out closets, we started weeding, we started gardens. It's like we have this culture, and I know we know that, where we have to, it's a very American thing. It's not the only country, but is to like occupy every minute of our time. And so I have implored myself, and I also ask other people to think about ways that you can make time. Like I've already talked to 2 girlfriends this morning. And, I took my kid to the dentist. I got ready and put makeup on. I have a full caseload of clients today, but I've already found time to talk to 2 women in my life that are important. And trust me, I wanted to say, I can't. I really did. So I want to tell people, it's not that I don't still have, like people always say, you must be so calm. You write about stress management. And no, I still feel stress. And at times I know when I have signs of burnout. The difference is that I know the signs, I stop, and then I think, what's really is a good decision right now? One of the mom's friends that I talked to, she is a mom of one of my daughter's friends. I talked to her for only 9 minutes, but we got a lot done in 9 minutes. You know what I mean? And the other friend is my very best friend. And I was getting ready for this, but I was like, you know what? I'll put the headphones on. I'll put the makeup on while I'm talking to her. I talked to her for 45 minutes. And so I just want to say, like, if I can do it, I know that you can do it. And it just boosts my mood. Trust me, I'm in a much more energized, better mood because I just talked to my very best friend on the planet right before I got on this call. And that fills my bucket. It really, really does. She's across the country and it fills my bucket. And so I can't say enough about just try it out and see, you do have time. You can make time.
I love that idea of banning busy. I do agree with you. A lot of times busy is a cop-out. You know, oh, I'm busy. That's code for I don't want to be bothered. People don't want to make time. But it is so essential that we make time, because it's also how we interact with other people. And so, in your book, which is right here, everyone, Mommy Burnout, in the book, and what you just alluded to, when we get burnout, when we get stressful, that has a severe impact on us, but it also has an impact on our families and on our children. And oftentimes we need motivation to make changes, to do something differently. So can you speak to the impact that it has on your children and your family when mommy is burnt out, when mommy is miserable? How does that impact the family and really affect everyone?
Yeah. Yeah, I could probably spend the rest of the time talking about this, but I'm going to try to really be relevant, right, to right now, what's happening in our country, in our world, but in our country, in our communities. We are stressed like we probably have never experienced before. We're financially stressed. Time is even more of a greater commodity. People are trying to work or run a household with their kids there all the time, maybe with their spouse or partner there all the time. You don't have a lot of time to yourself. Our routines are thrown off. Summertime, a lot of times you travel, you might see family, and a lot of that has been disrupted. And what is happening right now today is the big question on every parent's mind is, what is going to happen with school? Is it going to open? Is it going to be on time? Should I send my kid? Am I dumb to send my kid? Should I just do online? And these are the questions that are just bubbling over on people's minds. And so the way that we handle this is going to set the tone and the precedent for how our kids are going to handle this. And I know that that's motivating for me. So when I was writing Mommy Burnout, one of the things that I said was, and this was like in editor pitches when we're talking to different editors and figuring out who's the best publisher for this, I said, moms, they'll put themselves last, and we do. We generally let our friendships go. We let our own health go. We come last. Moms will put everything before themselves, but number one on the list, they'll do anything for their kids. So if we can convince moms that taking care of themselves and right now managing our own stress is good for our kids, then I know you'll do it. If I just say, oh, this is just good for you, and you should really reach out to your friends, and that's just good for you, you're much less likely to do that as a parent. So what I will say is that the last chapter of Mommy Burnout is about legacy. And I know for me, and so this is another great example. I know for me, when I was writing the book, that was a question. I'm in a couple different, I have been in like entrepreneurial groups. I'm in a women's group right now, but that's a question that gets me every time. What is the legacy you want to leave? So I thought, I was asked that question at some point a few years ago, and that's like a showstopper, because then you realize, oh, no, I'm not waiting till next year or 5 years or 10 years to start leaving that legacy. I got to live that legacy today. You don't know if today is my last day. Right. So I better live the life that I want to leave a legacy behind, right? So for my kids, what happened to me, how applying Mommy Burnout to my real life was, I definitely end the book with that. What legacy do you want to leave? Do you want to have been calm, patient, a yeller, sarcastic? What is it that you want to leave? And a lot of people, that brings them to tears, because they're like, oh my gosh, I would never, I say, would you want your child to grow up and be the parent that you are today? And I will say that, yeah, that's like, right? Gets right to you. But that is a stone cold question. It just is true. If your son or daughter grows up and when they are your age, they are the type of parent you are, how do you feel about that? Does that make you proud? And I will tell you that 8 or 9, 10 times out of 10, when I ask that question, that brings a woman to tears. And they usually say, no, I would never want them to live this life. I run around like a chicken with their head cut off all the time. I'm never present. I feel so torn. I'm stretched too thin. Those are the kinds of responses they give. So what happened for me, the way I applied that legacy question, and I was so aware on March 13th, even really on March 5th, my daughter's a gymnast, and I flew to Arizona for a gymnastics meet. And I remember the night before going, should I be doing this? This is when I'm really like a real adult. Like, should we be getting on a plane? Like schools weren't shut down or anything, but the talk, it was starting to get loud. Like there's this virus going around. So we wore gloves, and There were no masks, right? But we did have gloves and we had wipes. And so what happened was I just made a commitment to say, they will never forget this time in their lives. None of us will ever forget 2020, right? None of us will ever forget coronavirus. None of us will ever forget where were you, or what was the day like your school first shut down. Just that is a big memory for a lot of kids. And so I just thought, I want them to have this memory that they were safe, that mom was a leader, that we had food, that we were taken care of. And so let me tell you, I was like a mom on a mission. And I was like, that is what's going to happen. And when I have my moments, I journal, I talk to my spouse, I talk to my friends. But for them, I definitely show some vulnerability sometimes. Like today, literally this morning, our neighbor came over and said to my son, do you want to go to Urban Air? And I was just like, I'm so sorry, buddy, but I'm just not comfortable with that. And then when the friend left, I sat and talked to him about it and said, it's actually really hard for me to make that choice. I know that there's probably a good chance you could go there and everything could be fine, but I'm uncomfortable with that. And I'm really sorry. You know what I mean? I took the time. I could have just been like, no, you're not going to Urban Air, and it'd just be done, right? And keep moving on with my day. But I just thought he may be thinking, but why? And why is it okay for our neighbor to go, but not okay for us to go? Or why do we wear masks, but our neighbor doesn't? Or why do we not do this? And, all these things. Right. So I've just been very intentional with saying my legacy and how my kids feel is a direct result on how I feel and how I'm doing. So I manage myself first. And I really do. I really do walk that talk. I come first. We need to come first. You cannot regulate a dysregulated child when you're dysregulated. Right? So a dysregulated adult cannot regulate a child. So if I'm stressed out, if I'm worried about the virus or finances or whatever it is, I can't really be totally present for my kids. So therefore, instead, under stress, what parents are going to tend to do is try to focus on their kids. What can you do to make your kids happy? What should I do? What should I do? And really, none of the research backs that up. And I practice this. When I'm stressed and I'm worried about things, I go to myself first. Okay, what do I need to do for me today? What do I need to do today? I booked myself a massage. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I did it because I'm holding on to tension in my shoulders and I'm feeling it. And I'm like, I just want to let that go. And that's one massage. It doesn't have to be that. I take a walk outside. I listen to loud music. I love music. I love, those are things that I do. I do it first. It could be kind of chaotic in my house. I don't start parenting when I'm not feeling like I can do that. I'll go outside and take a 15-minute walk or a quick run, listen to some good music, come back, and let me tell you, I handle it totally different than I would have if I stayed while we were all stressed.
I really like that. And I like that you started off with the plane example, because we've heard over 100 times, you must put on your oxygen mask first before you assist somebody else. Because if you're dying of oxygen, you cannot help anybody else.
You both go down.
You have got to figure out a way to take care of yourself. And so I really like that you bring that up. And I also like that you bring up communication. Because I think our end all be all, everything falls down to communication. I was looking through your website and on your blog, you've got a couple of different points about communicating to people about coronavirus. And then there's this interesting point about communicating to your children about grief and coronavirus grief, and really communications in that. And so if we have people who are struggling with either their own children or just children in their lives, or even themselves, can you speak to a little bit about that grief that is associated with coronavirus and some techniques we can use to communicate that to our children?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say that it really early on, I started to have this feeling like, there's this collective grief, and now it's kind of collective trauma that is reverberating through the air. And I just, reviewed the stages of grief and thought, this is exactly where we're at. We are grieving. We're grieving our lives. We're grieving our summers. We're grieving senior graduation. We're grieving proms. We're grieving rites of passage, 8th grade to 9th grade, 5th grade to 6th grade, all of these things that are very, very wired in us to be looking for, to be talking about all year. And I think it's important to call it what it is, which is grief. It is a loss. And in response to the loss, we have a process. And it's nice to take the time to think of it as a grief, because if not, we are all surviving. Some people are thriving right now,
Mm-hmm.
but many more people are just surviving right now. And so if you think about it from the stages of, first you're in denial, right? You're just in denial. Like the first day that we started hearing about this, or maybe schools will close, or we're going to do an extended spring break, right? We were like a little in denial, like extended spring break. I was like, no, 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 that's AKA for schools are closing. This is not extended spring break, right? So it was like, okay, so you're in denial, right? You're, oh, well, a week or two off,
Yeah.
clean up
We
the
just thought
schools.
2 weeks,
Right.
that's it. No big deal.
No
Yeah.
big
Complete
deal.
denial.
Total. Like, get some extra Lysol wipes. We'll be fine. Right. And then all of a sudden you couldn't get a Lysol wipe, and you started
Right.
realizing like
Right.
things are getting real now. Can't even find hand sanitizer or a Lysol wipe. Right. And then toilet paper.
Right.
And so it started off in denial. We were. And then, that like even the toilet paper is symbolic of the panic.
Mm-hmm.
It's symbolic of what happens when you go to like anger.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the stages of grief, you have the denial, and then you have anger, and you have bargaining too. So the bargaining, we are all bargaining. We're also bargaining today. I'm bargaining. I'm in my office, right? We would do bargaining like, well, if I go, but then I wear, today I have an N95 mask. I'm going to see with my clients. Like I upgraded now to the next level, right? I'm like, no, I don't think a face covering is good enough. So bargaining is just like, if I do this, I'm pretty sure it'll be okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, right? And so we're bargaining, and then we go through finally like our sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's interesting, then the fifth stage is considered acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not at acceptance yet.
No.
I don't think anybody's at acceptance. We're not at acceptance. None of us are. But for me, at least I'm consciously trying to work on it. Like I've been telling the kids since the beginning of summer, this is going to be my attempts at acceptance are, hey guys, this is going to be an unusual school year. There's a chance you literally might step foot in school and 14 days later it's closed. Here's what I'm doing to plan for that. Here's what daddy's doing. Like that's my attempts at it. But I have my moments of not even wanting to be in acceptance. Like I'm rejecting even wanting to be in that stage. But the interesting thing is the sixth stage, which is a little bit more recent, which is, I think, really appropriate to grief, is finding purpose, making meaning. And we're certainly not there yet. Some people have had moments, I think, throughout this. It's kind of like if you get a cancer diagnosis or something, jolts your life. For some people, this stage of this pandemic has been that for them. And they maybe have reached out to people they haven't spoken to in a while, or said things they needed to say, or whatever it might be. But eventually coming to some purpose with this, and I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what it is for me at all, but will be important, and that might happen years down the road. We don't know yet. So those are my thoughts around grief. And I think that if we keep that top of mind as a parent, it allows you to engage with your kid in a way that really helps you tap into your empathy. And I keep talking about empathy, but I think like, I think parents still need, because it's hard to have empathy to someone else when you are like running on empty.
Right.
It is really hard to
Right.
be in a genuine, present, non-distracted, empathetic place to say, I am so sorry that you were supposed to go away to that summer camp. And you were so looking forward to it and you didn't get to do it, right? So it's hard to do that when you think, I'm not even sure how I'm putting food on the table, or I'm not even sure if my boss is going to keep me around next month. I'm not even, like it's really hard to like have empathy that your kid didn't get to go to summer camp or whatever, when you have what you consider maybe bigger, more real things on your mind. But we have to put ourselves in the shoes of whatever your age of child is and think about what their experience is, and also pause and say, what am I modeling for them? Because if you model stress for them, it's not helping. It's really not. It's a good indicator if you feel really stressed out that like it's time for you to give yourself double oxygen mask and to be able to really be there for your kids.
I love that you mentioned modeling. I think modeling is one of the most important things that a lot of people don't really consider. I think parents have to consider it because, you know, literally your children are following behind you and doing everything that you do. And then all of us, you know, role model. I know even in my life, role model was a word I really didn't want anything to do with. I didn't want anybody examining me and trying to model what I did, but it's a fact. And we are modeled and we role model people. And on your website, one of the things that I thought was really cool is you started this new course where you try to tackle, I think, one of the most difficult relationships, complicated relationships on the planet, the mother-daughter relationship. And you have a whole course that you've developed. What led you to develop that course, and how does that really play into our environment that we're in right now?
So I'm glad you asked about that, because all we have been doing the last couple of months has been, of course, we're really inundated with, coronavirus, staying healthy, what to do, where to go, who to travel, all this other stuff, right? And what's been really interesting is that throughout every day, every minute of every day, other things though are still going on in life. People with addiction still have addiction. People with mental health issues still have mental health issues. And girls who are, in puberty are still going through puberty, right? So the world is still, it seems like it's quote shut down or so limited, but all of these pre-existing conditions are still occurring. So what happened was since 2013 here in Denver, I have been in the surrounding areas, I've been teaching a class called Start with the Talk, which is really my favorite thing that I do. And it's parent-child. I will say usually mother-daughter, but it can be parent-child. And it's for girls and their moms or parents ages 9 to 13. And I focus on the social, emotional, and physical changes that happen during this time. Okay. And so I've been doing it, but there's only one of me. So people have said, well, should you do a trainer model? Should you have I had to scale it. And I just didn't know what to do with it. And then when the pandemic hit, it just hit me like a ton of bricks in March. Like, you know what? I got to make this an online class because I don't know the next time I'm going to do a talk in person.
Right.
I still don't, I'm booked on Zoom talks through August 15th of 2021.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yes. Meaning that just even in next year, a year from now, there are still people planning their events virtually. Wow. Companies that are just not going to bank on getting 250 people in a room. Right. And so, my talks were never that big, but they were usually 50 or 60 people, like 25 pairs. And so I just thought, I don't want this to go away. It's the sweetest class that I do. It covers so many topics that parents have a hard time bringing up with their kids, from just breast development, pubic hair, getting your period, acne, you smell, girls in puberty just stink. But those things too, why doesn't my friend want to play with me anymore? Or I still want to play dolls and now they want to be on social media. And what if I'm not there yet? And I just try to cover it all. And, so that's what prompted me to do it. It was really my example of shifting and saying I had to cancel 2 talks already. And I don't want this talk to go away. It's too important. So I made it an online class, and which is kind of nice. It's pre-recorded and people can just watch it at their leisure, broken up into short modules, like 17 to 30 minutes max. And then I'm trying to create also a community online, like a private Facebook group, so that these parents, once you do the class, it's called Start with the Talk because the talks keep going and going, and they should keep going and going. And I do it really in this model of celebrating. So I say to the girls, and I even say it on the camera, I say, okay, so now blah, blah, blah. We've done 30 minutes of talking about your period. And when that day comes, I want you to press pause right now. And I want you to look at your mom or your dad and say, what are we going to do to celebrate? And it's this beautiful moment when I do it live where I say, okay, guys, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. And everybody's talking and sometimes they're laughing. Some girls cry. There's always a couple girls that cry. And it's just this beautiful class, honestly. And then people come back, and if they want to, they could share what are they going to do? A lot of people say, we're going to go to lunch. We're going to go get a manicure. We're going to go bra shopping, whatever they're going to do. And so again, it's very much about being intentional. And even though so many very serious things are happening in the world right now, for anybody who's listening, who's a parent, just remember that no matter what the age of your child, from a baby to a young adult, they have other things though still going on in their lives, other things, parts of development, people they're missing, depression, anxiety. And so we can't forget about those things.
Mm-hmm. I love that you have reinvented rites of passage. And we've lost some of our traditional rites of passage, you know, like you mentioned, the graduations and celebrations, and I know bar mitzvahs and quinceañeras, and we've lost those, but that doesn't mean that those things go away. And I'm really learning from you to shift my focus back to, you know, what is going on and how I can contribute to my child's life and to the children that are around me. And I think that's really cool. Thank you so much for that. I have a question in the chat, or a couple of chat comments that I'm going to pull up here. We have one participant who's saying, true talk. Lots of moms and wives don't have close friends. Culturally, we are made to believe that being a wife and a mother takes a lot of your time, and you don't really need connections or friends. Please let me have your inputs. Oh, somebody who talking about that connections and how valuable that is. Do you have anything else you want to share with her, since it seems like this is something that's very relevant to her?
Yeah, I do. You know, I think one of the dirty little words we haven't talked about yet that always comes up in conjunction with motherhood, particularly, is guilt. We haven't talked about guilt, right?
Keyword.
Yes. And so to the woman who just made that comment, what happens is you start to feel guilty if you take care of yourself, right? If you buy yourself a new outfit, oh man, but maybe I should have bought my kids that t-shirt they wanted, right? Or if you have to say to your partner or spouse, if you have one, hey, you know, Thursday night, I want to go out with Amara. I really want to get to know her better. Well, does that mean though my time's more important than his? He had a long work week too. Should I really ask? I shouldn't really ask him. He's too tired, right? And so that's what happens is it's guilt that gets in our way. It is societal messages. First of all, there were overt societal messages. So one of the things I haven't said about the TEDx talk that I did, is that I start off with the quintessential picture of the 1950s. And the truth is, you know, that's how the talk opens up. I was researching motherhood. I don't have it memorized anymore, but something like I was researching motherhood, and I came across The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan. And in it, chapter 1, yes, it's so fascinating to look back now. And I read that in women's studies. I took women's studies as an undergrad, and we read The Feminine Mystique. It just didn't relate to me. It didn't speak to me at the time. I was like 19 or 20 years old. It just didn't. But today, I mean, it's like a life changer for me. So chapter 1 was called The Problem That Has No Name. And so I start the TEDx talk there and saying, she describes this problem that has no name, which was basically feeling miserable out in the suburbs, talking to nobody. You had just come from the cities. People moved out to the suburbs. Now they got nobody to talk to. They were miserable driving their kids around in cars, and they felt lonely, right? Their husbands worked all day, came home, expected the house and the car, you know, everything to be perfect. And they were silently miserable, taking Xanax. Mommy's little helper was Xanax. Okay. So mommy's little helper today is wine, but back then it was Xanax. So nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. People want to know, do we really have it worse? I mean, things have just evolved in different ways, but moms were pretty unhappy in the 1950s too. So what my point is though, is that women feel guilty. They think they're selfish. They feel bad if they ask for help. That's part 2. So guilt is part 1. Part 2 is women are terrible at asking for help. And then when we do ask for help, we feel guilty about asking for the help, and then we feel bad. And then I might even say no. I might say to you, hey, would you mind doing blah, blah, blah for me? Like, I got to get a mammogram tomorrow, you know, and I'll still feel bad. Could you watch my kids for 2 hours? And you might be like, yeah, no problem. And there's a good chance I'll come back and be like, no, you know what? It's fine. I'll just bring them. They'll be fine. I'll bring the iPads. You know, like we rein it back. Because we're like, oh, I can't believe I just asked you for help. And now you said yes. And now I don't even know what to do. So I will say that between the messages that we get
Mhm.
from our own mothers,
Mhm.
from society, that you should be the end all be all,
Mhm.
from our relationships or our marriages. There are a lot of relationships or marriages in which the other person says, you know, it would be really, it must be nice to go get a workout in. It must be nice, you know, you get sarcastic, little
Mhm.
jabs with each other. And those are the kinds of things that shut us down. So I think as women, we need to keep working on like our women's issues today. They are evolving, but they're still there. Women's specific issues are still there. And self-care with no guilt is really high on the list. I mean, this is why we do have women walking around with not getting their mammograms or not getting a colonoscopy and not even going for physicals, because they put everything before themselves.
Mhm. We have now, that sparked tons of comments coming through. And so we've got another lady who's talking about how sometimes, unfortunately, other moms can make us feel guilty and add to that, and how we really need to support each other. And then we had another mom here who's talking about how she created a babysitting co-op where,
Love
as a way to
that.
save money and really build that connection so that you could go to your exercise class and release your stress, and then really partner with each other. So I think, again, kind of wrapping it back into that communication and really building connections with others and the value of those connections.
Absolutely. I want to say something about the co-op because I'm going to share something that I'm thinking about, or I've already put out there to my neighbors. So um, I'm here in Denver, so our houses are all on top of each other. And it's funny because what happened, I love co-ops, and I love the idea of them. And they are so fun because when you have a true co-op with other parents,
Mhm.
the funniest thing is sometimes it'll be like, the people will say, all right, I'll see you. Here's my kid. I'm going to go take a nap. I'm going to go do nothing, you know, and for some reason in a co-op culture, there's
Mhm.
way more. It's not like, okay, I got to go to work. You're not my babysitter, right? You're my friend or you're my neighbor. And basically you're taking care of a whole gaggle of kids for a few hours. So
Mhm.
us moms can go do whatever. And tomorrow I'll do it. And then
Mhm.
you go do whatever you want. Go get your nails done. Go out to lunch. Go do whatever you want, right? So I like the co-op nature because it doesn't have this generally
Mhm.
this pressing feeling like you got to be doing something very important, you know. But so when this, again in March, when we didn't even know what was really about to happen to us, I remember it was like a Sunday night and I was like, hey, to a couple of friends, do you guys want to, if anybody wants to drop their kids off, like I'll teach them. I sent it to the moms of the same age of my youngest son, who's 7. I'll teach them, like I'll just do some work with them. We'll do some writing, whatever. And then like I did really, like a couple, you know, people were initially interested, and then they were like, I think we're supposed to kind of be quarantining. And it was like, we were just adjusting, like, oh yeah, I guess so. I guess we shouldn't see each other. And then that was the beginning of not seeing people for a very long time. So now we had some people over our backyard, socially distanced, little barbecue last weekend. And I said, okay, we have to have learned from what we just went through in March. So here's the deal. The day, because I think I'm speaking in the affirmative, I'm counting on the day schools close down because there'll be some sort of outbreak. Let's say in September,
Mhm.
we already know what to do, guys. So we're going to quarantine for 10 days, and everybody better really do it if you want to be in this co-op. And then when 10 days is up, you've truly quarantined, we will use certain houses as those kind of co-oping schools to
Mhm.
give you a break, to
Mhm.
maybe give the kids some live in-person support for whatever they're learning, you know, and
Mhm.
honestly just give each other a break. And so I just was like, we got to learn from this opportunity. So I love that spirit, and that women doing that, and I will say women, although I'm sure there's some dads too that stay at home or whatever they're doing. But I think parents who can get in the mindset of, you don't always have to find a paid helper. We do, by and large, now live in a society where we don't have immediate family around.
Mhm.
So relying on neighbors and friends
Mhm.
is more important than ever. And the amounts of moves, like I think it's like on average there's 11 moves or something throughout an adult person's life. So a lot of times people don't feel rooted in their communities. And when they don't have that rooting in a community, I say then build one.
Yeah.
Trust me, you build it and they will come.
Mhm. I love that. I absolutely love that. That is one of our principles. Build a community amongst like-minded people, rather your parents or your professionals or whatever, and really using what you have. Don't always think I have to pay somebody, I have to figure this out. Be creative. Continue to build up your community and your neighborhoods. You know, that's what makes us stronger. That's how we really continue to build each other up. And so we have a couple of thank yous in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing the information. Some people asking for your book. And so we will put the book and the title and the author's name in our communications at the end of this presentation. But I would like to go ahead and close out with you. I have a couple of questions that I've been asking every speaker. And so I'd like to ask those. So my first question is, what brings you joy?
I'm just going to do my kids. It came to the top of my mind.
Mm-hmm. Kids, what breaks your heart?
Loneliness.
Good one.
I'm doing this like lightning round. I'm doing this like one answer lightning round. Is that what you want? I'm like, all right, I'm ready.
Inside the Actors Studio, that guy was my hero. I loved him. All right. What advice would you give to 18-year-old Sheryl?
Oh, you keep going, girl. You got this. And I did. I knew what I wanted to do. I did it. You know, it's very interesting. This is I'll make this a short answer, but I was raised by a single teen mom. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing about that is that she did give me the message from the start, like, you got to be self-reliant and you can do whatever you want. And so even though I had pretty much every disadvantage, you could check the box on every disadvantage, from a very early age, I had that message given to me. So now whenever I have the opportunity to give another young person that message in an authentic way, I do, because it was very, very influential. Like when I was 18, I was like, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I really did do everything I've wanted to do. So my advice would have been just like, keep going with it. Don't be scared. You know, now I feel more fear than I did then. Then I was just like, here I am, world, I'm coming.
I love that. That's a common thing amongst all of our speakers, that just go for it. Don't question yourself. Just go for it.
Yeah, just do it.
And then my final question is very simple. Are you a chocolate person or are you a vanilla person?
Oh, chocolate all the way. Dark chocolate with nuts.
Oh, let's add an additional topping. So dark chocolate and nuts. Okay, that's awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for spending this brief hour with us. I mean, I feel like we could have talked for 3 or 4 hours on a lot of these topics. And I truly appreciate your contributions and everything that you have said. I know that our guests will definitely benefit from that. Our supporters, as well as a lot of the women that we are serving, are moms or single moms and have struggled with this. And I think that it'll really help them get through these days, as well as plan that legacy for the future. So thank you so much for spending this time with us.
Thank you. And thank you to all the participants. I'm sorry I couldn't see your faces, but you can find me in social media online, and please feel free to send me any private comments that you want. And thank you. You were an awesome interviewer. I've been interviewed a lot, and you were just an awesome interviewer. So I loved our conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. All right. Got thank yous coming through. We're going to say bye to our doctor. And so, ladies and gentlemen, supporters everywhere, we want to thank you so much for participating in our summer speaker series. This has been truly rewarding, hearing from all of these amazing women from all over the country and really helping them teach us how we can thrive in work and in life. Please keep in mind that our Summer Speaker Series was created in lieu of our Fall Fashion event. As you know, events have been canceled all over the country, and a lot of nonprofits are struggling. And Dress for Success Denver has been very fortunate to have the support of viewers like you, which are allowing us to not only keep our doors open, but allow us to scale and serve more women. And so today we are asking you to help us achieve our goal of helping women reach financial and economic independence by providing professional attire, career development tools, and a network of support. In Denver, it costs Dress for Success $150 to serve every single woman that comes through our doors. And so today we are asking for your help. Can you help us serve one woman to provide her with a no-contact suiting, with free virtual career coaching, as well as monthly professional development meetings through our professional women's group that help her build that community and create those connections that will help her today as well as tomorrow as we push through this economic uncertainty and move toward recovery. So I am asking for you to support us so that we can continue our great work for the 17,000 women that we have served in Denver and for the next 17,000 that we will serve. At the conclusion of this presentation, you will see a link in the bottom of our page. Please feel free to make a donation there, and please know every dollar helps. Thank you so much for paying attention and listening to our summer speaker series. We hope to do this again and to see you again soon. Have a wonderful afternoon.